Here are your learning goals for this flipped lesson. Students will understand how and why democracy developed in Athens and who the main players were in this development. That is what you will get in this flipped lesson. Following the flipped lesson and in school, we will look at how this applies to the understanding to the development of democracy in the United States. And I want you to be able to understand the differences between Sparta and Athens. So let's start with Athens, the birth of democracy. During this time period, city-states were overthrowing kings and developing constitutions. Constitutions were works of man and therefore could be changed to meet the needs of the city-state. Athens began as a monarchy, a king or queen. It eventually moved to an oligarchy, ruled by a few, then to a democracy, ruled by the people. Democracy was overthrown, and it was back into an oligarchy, and then back again to a democracy. We're going to follow parts of that path here. It all began with Draco. Not that Draco. That guy kind of creeps me out. That's better. Draco. Draco was the first legislator of Athens who brought written law into play. The only problem was his laws were, if broken, the punishments were extremely harsh. Like for loitering, death. For stealing an apple, death. We're going to watch some of these videos tomorrow and learn a little bit more about Draco in class. As the people grew tired of these punishments, they turned to someone by the name Solon. Okay? Solon came into power, took over, and decided that there were three major issues. There was an economic issue, there was a social issue, and there was a political issue. His economic solution was to focus on making and exporting olive oil. He thought this could take care of their economic woes. His social solution: there were Athenians who were enslaved to other Athenians because they owed them money. He said anyone that was enslaved because of debts, because of owing money, they are now free. And he said, you know what? Let's erase all the debts. Everyone, we are starting over. Another cool thing he did was he said that everyone must teach their son a trade or a job so that as they grew up, they already had knowledge to take on a job in their society. And finally, the political solution. First of all, at this point in time, in order to rule, you had to have a noble background. He's saying, you know what? Not anymore. Now it's money. Now, obviously, this is not the perfect solution, but it's better than just being of noble blood. At least now, if you have money, this opens the pool for other people to possibly run and rule Athens. He said anyone who owns land can be a citizen and join the General Assembly. The General Assembly will elect public officials, and judges will consist of the citizens of Athens. Alright, so he thinks he's fixed this. Now that I've fixed this thing, I'm going to give up my power. I've taken over, I fixed this thing, I'm going to give up my power. However, I need everyone here to leave it alone for 10 years. Just let it play itself out. Well, 5 years later, of course, we get someone by the name of Stratos, the cousin of Solon. He's a tyrant. Now, when we think of that word tyrant, we usually think of something negative. Tyrant simply means someone who comes in and takes over power, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. Here's how he did it. He walks into Athens with a tall woman and claims she's the goddess Athena, and they take over power. Now, he is a tyrant, but like I said, it's not such a bad thing that people like him. Greece becomes an economic power, and they trade olive oil all over the Mediterranean Sea. He divides the largest states up and gives them to farmers who owned no land at all, and gives citizenship to all, even if you didn't own land. Okay, so this makes the poorer people happy. He encourages sculptures and other arts to entertain the people, and when you have a society with arts, it generally means the society is doing pretty well. So overall, not a bad dude. However, he's not going to be around forever. So when Pisistratus dies, his son Hippias takes over. And at first he's pretty good, but when his brother is murdered, he becomes pretty ruthless. He's pretty paranoid, and the people no longer like him. This guy Hippias has got to go. And that brings us to Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes overthrows Hippias and kicks him out of Athens and begins making some reforms. But some of these reforms anger some of the other aristocrats. The aristocrats are the wealthy members of society. Well, a guy by the name of Isagoras wants to take control from Cleisthenes. So he asks Sparta, hey, will you help me get rid of this guy? And they say, sure. And they send a force to Athens, and they overthrow Cleisthenes, and he's forced to leave. He's exiled out of Athens. There's no one left to take on Isagoras. But the Athenians are angry. They are not going to have it. And they revolt against Isagoras. And they scale the Acropolis walls. They climb and they execute all the... But now what? Well, they go get Cleisthenes back. And he does something pretty remarkable. He knows he can't do the same thing that he's done in the past. So he goes and creates the common vote of the people, creating the first direct democracy, meaning citizens directly voted. This is the definition of a direct democracy. Think for a minute. Do we have a direct democracy? Do we vote directly for laws and things that are in our Constitution? Do we vote for them directly? We'll talk about that in class. Some of his other reforms included ostracism. Once a year, they could vote to have one person exiled for a year. For instance, if, say, Joe was becoming too powerful and they thought that he might become a tyrant, they could say, Joe, take your stuff and go. You're out of here for one full year. Ostracism, to be ostracized, cast aside. He opened the assembly to all males over the age of 20, gave them freedom of speech. He put term limits on the Council of 500 so that everyone had a chance to serve. All boys had to go to school at the age of 7 and learn math and reading. And citizenship was granted to those at the age of 18 if they just swore an oath to do what was expected of them in Athens. Now, Cleisthenes put Athens on the road to greatness, but it is Pericles that will lead Athens into its golden age. Pericles was a famous orator, a speaker of Athens, and he is going to use money from the Military Defense League that they're going to form after the Persian Wars that we study. And he's going to use that money, and he's going to beautify Athens with it. He has the Parthenon built, and Athens becomes the arts, educational, and cultural center of Greece. He is also going to lead the Athenians in a war against the Spartans, a war that's going to be pretty disastrous for both sides. He will die of plague while the Spartans laid siege to Athens, and he is stuck inside the city walls. So, quickly in review, Athens began as a monarchy. Then this led to an oligarchy. There was an uprising. Things must change. Unlike Sparta, where they didn't want change, they were afraid of change. Solon is going to develop the first constitution. Pisistratus, it was the tyrant. He was supported by the poor. Cleisthenes is going to develop the first democratic constitution, the Democratic Assembly. Now, Pericles is going to be the one that takes them into the Golden Age. Quickly, a couple dates, just for reference. 594 BC, Solon. 546, Pisistratus. 527, Hippias. 510, Cleisthenes. Isagoras is going to seize power, but Cleisthenes will return. And then 460 to 429, the golden age of Athens, and this is Pericles. We will take a look at this review in class tomorrow. That should do it. Thanks.